be talking about testing into a better user experience. And essentially, what that means is A/B testing. Before we get started, I wanted to run a bit of an A/B test here on stage. Granted, it's not going to be a true A/B test because you're all going to see the two experiences I'm going to show you. But I'm going to show you two different experiences for Netflix sign-up. And I want you to tell me which one you think would do better to help improve sign-ups for Netflix users. So, experience A. It consists of 6 pages, 6 steps to get a user from our homepage on to signing up to Netflix. So this is experience A. And this is experience B. We removed 2 pages because we just felt like they're redundant. There's just some added copy. They could probably be removed. You get the point. It's going to make it a little less friction for someone to sign up. So, show of hands, who thinks experience A is the better experience? It's going to increase signups for Netflix. All right, a couple hands. All right. Experience B. How many thinks experience B? All right, majority of the room. Well, guess what? You're all wrong. And you're wrong like me. I remember thinking this when we first decided that we were going to add steps to the sign-up flow. I was like, you're nuts. Like, this is not going to be a good experience. I've always been taught less is more. Less friction, the faster someone can sign up, that's a lot better. But in this case, I was actually very, very wrong. We tested it, and experience A was better. So it was confusing to me. I'm like, this is really weird. But that's why we A/B test. Honestly, that's why I love it. It's because we're constantly being able to be proven wrong. We don't all have the right answers. We don't know the best user experience, and A/B testing can really help us. So I'm Ryan Burgess. I'm a software engineering manager at Netflix. I lead part of our acquisition UI team. And what we're responsible for is building all of the sign-up flows for Netflix. And that's like payment, registration, onboarding, login, really everything that brings you into becoming a member of Netflix. And we do it cross-platform. So we're building for iOS, Android, website, and TV. And guess what? We do a ton of A/B testing. We're constantly iterating on that sign-up flow to try and make a better user experience, to increase our sign-ups, to change things, take advantage of new technologies. Whatever it is, we are A/B testing. We're not even writing features. I consider it we're writing A/B tests. So, I want to talk to you today about A/B testing. I want to cover a little bit about what Netflix does and how we A/B test. I also want to talk through some of the challenges that we've had, and that honestly that A/B testing comes into play and brings a lot of challenges, and also things that we've learned along the way. And then my goal here is I want others to A/B test. I think it's super important, and so I'm hoping that your takeaway here is that you want to start A/B testing if you aren't already. So, how does Netflix do A/B testing? Well, we probably run definitely over hundreds of tests a year. And that can be within the sign-up flow, like I mentioned on my team, or it could be within the member experience, showing different content, ordering. There's a lot of stuff. Everything is testable, and we want to test to make sure that we're doing the right thing for our users. So I thought I'd break it up into like a 5-step process, and to really walk through how we start an A/B test and how we end up launching it. And we always start with a hypothesis. This is probably the most important thing, is starting with what are you trying to fix? What is your thoughts? What is your goal? Don't change that. Come up with that and stick to it. So let's make an example. All right, so on our homepage, when you come to Netflix.com, we originally have a lifestyle image, and it's not really telling you much about what Netflix is. Let's say we think that showing content, a couple images, will actually help drive signups. So we'll tell you a little bit more about what Netflix is. So that's our hypothesis. We can show content that will help sign up. So we build these experiences. Version A on the side there is the control experience. It's what's running in production. It's what we want to test against. So then we have the other 2 cells that are showing, well, variations of content. And we want to see if that will help drive sign up. So we've created our experiences. Everything's ready to go. Now we want to run this in production. And so what we'll do is send production traffic to randomly allocate to one of these 3 versions. They will run over time. The users will be cookied because we want the user, if they do come back to Netflix.com, maybe it takes them a few times to come back before they sign up. We want them to see the same experience every time until they sign up. especially while we're running this test. All right, so we've run our test, we've hit statistical significance, we found our winner, and this is the one. This version C is the winner. So what do we do next? Well, we want to roll that out to everyone. And what we call this is productization. We want to roll this to our global audience. This has now become our new control. So we refactor our code, rip out all the A/B testing logic, make sure that we haven't cut any corners. We want this to now live on forever. So this becomes our new experience. We're done. We did an amazing job. Hey, we've maybe grown signups, and we're happy. Well, it's not always that easy. A/B testing is, there's challenges that come along with it. And there are also a lot of things that we've learned that I want to share. All right, for engineers, I got to break it to you, and designers, it's a lot more work. You're not just writing one feature, you're writing it multiple times, you're creating multiple variations, and it increases the work. And this is probably really disheartening, but you're ultimately throwing away code. No matter what, you have to throw away code. Because best case scenario, if you have, say, 5 variations, best case, one of those is going to actually be the winner. So ultimately, you're always throwing away code. Another thing that's interesting that I always think about is timing. And there's always this butting up against, while the test is running, you don't want to make changes in production because that could actually impact the test and hurt the data. And then you're just rerunning the test because it's blown. So say we're using React. And we're like, hey, let's migrate to Redux. That seems like a really great idea. Well, we can do that, but we don't want to introduce that into production while that A/B test is running. So we have to coordinate and make sure that we're timing everything right. And so that can be a bit of a tax as well. We want to be on Redux. We want to have that out there. A/B testing also adds a lot of complexity, whether it be just in the coding, but even in how we bundle code. So out of my example there's three versions. We don't want to ship all the code, like all the JavaScript, all the assets, all the CSS for all the experiences to the one person. If you're in experience B, you don't want the code from A and C. That is actually going to add bloat to the code. It's going to slow down the person's experience. So it's actually going to be a negative experience, and we don't want that. And that could actually hurt the test, too, is like if you've now slowed down some of the traffic to one or two of the experiences, that's not good either. This is one I think is very important. Granted, there are a lot of great solutions out there that do a lot of the A/B testing logic client side. I think doing server side is very, very important. Meaning that if you're going to decide who gets what experience, do that on the server. I think this is really important because it's now, when you do it on the client, you're introducing added lag. I've seen solutions where some of the tools will redirect to a different page. And we all know that's adding latency, and that could really negatively impact the user experience. Yes, we are A/B testing, and it might kind of affect someone's experience, but we don't want to negatively do it just by a performance issue. Another thing we found at Netflix that's actually been really useful is you can leverage A/B testing for technology migrations. Say we've got an old legacy Angular app, and we want to be on React, which I'm sure a lot of you can agree that's a good way to go. And we want to do this. We want to take all of our existing features in Angular and migrate to React. Well, we can do that as an A/B test, because we can actually vet to make sure that we haven't broken anything while migrating. And this isn't something we'd call an A/B test. We'd call it an AA test. We're really testing apples to apples. We're not changing the user experience. To the user, they don't know that they're on React or Angular, but we've changed the underlying technology. And another thing that we have learned at Netflix a few times and made this mistake, and I think we finally addressed not doing it anymore, but don't make design changes or layout changes or add a new feature while you're migrating. Because this test, if there was a design change and we saw some difference in the data, is it the technology that made the change, or is it design? It's very hard to decouple that. So when you're doing a migration as an A/B test, just stick to the code. Don't change anything for features. I know you want to, because there's some new thing that a designer wants or a product manager wants, but it's really good to hold off on that until you've vetted the migration. another interesting one that I had never thought of. I've been doing A/B testing for years, but I'd never really thought about all the bots that come to websites and web applications. There's a lot of them. They can be malicious, they can be search engines, they could just be scraping some content from the site. But this is added traffic. It's not real user traffic. So do you really want that in your A/B test? In our case, no. I think we want to test with real users. So I found that it's really important to try and detect the data that's coming through as a bot and remove that from the test. And it will help really understand, is this a true user, so that we're only allocating the test to real users. So I've talked a lot about extra work, more complexity, a lot of complications to go along with A/B testing. Why would you want to do it? Well, like I said in the original version, and a lot of you are wrong with me, is we don't have all the answers. We think that we know what the best user experience is, and that's great. We're going to try and build a good user experience. But we can test it to really understand if that truly is a good user experience. You can also continue innovating. Granted, you do not need A/B testing to continue innovating on your product. But what I really like about the A/B testing mentality is you're constantly looking at things that can be tested or changed, and you start to really understand, okay, if I make this little change, this could improve our business metrics, it could increase signups, whatever that may be. And it just kind of gets you then in that mentality of constantly innovating. Oftentimes I'll interview with someone and they're like interviewing for like a role on our team. And they're like, okay, you've created the sign-up flow, like it's done, like what else is there to do? Well, that's the thing is we're never done. We're constantly iterating. There's new technologies we want to take advantage of, new things that we want to change, different design patterns, things that, yes, you could do without A/B testing. You could just ship that and be like, great, well, we're going to do this brand new design pattern, and it's fine. But the thing is we can test this. We can actually understand, how does this impact our users? Is it negatively impacting it just because we change the color or layout of our site? Maybe, but maybe it's actually a good thing. Maybe it's flat and you just say, we want a new design, and that's okay too. We're also dealing with global audiences. I'm sure the products that you're creating are not just for people in Silicon Valley. They're probably for around the world or even across the US, and I guarantee you cannot speak to every user and understand what they like and dislike. It's impossible. But with A/B testing, you actually get a lot of real-world data to understand what covers your basis of your users. What's a good user experience? And probably one of the most important things, I don't know if engineers are always thinking about it, but we get paid to create. And so we're trying to improve the business. We're trying to drive, in my case, for my team, we're trying to drive signups. We're trying to grow Netflix, get more users. And that's what's important to our side of the business. And so we're wanting to drive those business metrics. And we can do that by A/B testing. We can understand what's improving it and what's hurting it. One of my favorite things about A/B testing, which will kind of contradict the painful point of throwing code away, is that you don't have to support features that don't get used. If you get data back that no one likes a feature, get rid of it. I mean, I've been there. I've had to build a feature that ends up taking a long time, and you realize no one's using it. It's not fun to support it long term. You're going to continue to innovate on other things, and you're still going to have to be going to fix bugs in this feature that no one's really using anyways. So to me, I actually like this part. Throw it out, move on, do something different. You can also reduce risks. And what I mean by this is maybe even to that feature, is that maybe spending 6 months on a feature, that's a lot of work. It could take a lot. Your product manager's like, hey, we want to create this thing. And you're like, all right, well, that's going to take 6 months of our time to do. Are there ways that you can break it up into smaller chunks to maybe test and get a signal, is this a good thing for our users? If it's not, you might have just prevented yourself from writing this feature for 6 months. Maybe you only invested 3 weeks to a month to get a signal that it didn't work, and then, okay, fine. Or it does work, and you can continue investing in it. You can also avoid the hippo, which is the highest paid person opinion. And I'm sure you've all been there. There's the product manager, or maybe it's a CEO, comes up with this brilliant feature idea. You're like, this is going to be a game changer for our users. And yes, it very well could be, but you don't always know. And that's why you can do that feature that they've suggested, but you can also test it. Because really, a fact without data is just an opinion. You saw it in my slides at the start. I thought that that was a bad idea of adding extra steps in our sign-up flow. But I was wrong. And really, at the end of the day, what we care about is the user experience. And so don't you want to check to make sure that you are, in fact, making a better user experience and not hurting it? All right, so hopefully I've kind of sold you a little bit on that A/B testing is a good thing and that you're maybe a little bit excited. All right, maybe I should invest in this. Well, how do you get started? Like really, like how do you think of an idea to start A/B testing? Well, I'm going to make it a little bit easy for you. Everything is testable. I mean it. Like, look at your sites, look at your applications. There's probably things there that you could just try something different. Maybe it's a different color or a different button style or messaging copy, whatever it is, a complete new layout. You can test that. And look for things that are impactful to change. And it doesn't always mean doing a whole new layout or design that's impactful. I've seen at Netflix times where we've changed button copy or just copy on a page, a new image, and it's really made a huge difference in our metrics. And that, to me, is pretty impactful. Also, look for friction areas. I mean, I saw the sign-up flow as being a friction area, as let's just remove steps that aren't needed. That could have been a really great thing, but it was also something we still learned. So look for things in your application that can be removed. Maybe it's input fields in a payment form. I oftentimes get asked my first and last name. Do they need that information? Is that really necessary? Remove it. That's an A/B test. Now you've got your version with name and first and last name, and then your second version doesn't have it. If that drives more people paying you, sounds like a pretty good win. One part, I did say everything's testable. One part I always try and preface is don't test things that if you do get data that will inform a decision, say your company has a logo or a brand color. If you test a different logo or a different brand color and it maybe helps your business metrics, are you actually going to change that? Probably the answer is no. So don't even bother testing it. I'm sure there's a million other things that you could be testing and investing your time in. And don't be scared to push the boundaries. Find those things that feel uncomfortable or you think, nah, there's no way that that's going to work. Let's try it. See if it actually does. Maybe it doesn't, but you'll still learn. And be comfortable failing. It's okay. Like, it's okay if something doesn't work. You've still learned. I mean, don't do it over and over again and expect a different result. That's probably not going to be helpful. But yeah, it's okay to fail because you're learning. And really solicit ideas from everyone. I mean, you're building something, you're in isolation. Talk to a peer, talk to other people in the company. Get feedback on it. Yes, it's very qualitative, but you might be able to get some ideas of things that you're like, yeah, that's maybe not a bad idea. We could probably test that. And so those are really good ways to test it. You can even run user testing studies. There's usertesting.com, there's things like that, or just go into a coffee shop, ask someone to take a look at your product. You can get some really great ideas on things that you may want to A/B test. Another one it's not necessary always, but I feel like it's important. When you're running an A/B test, it can vary on how long you need to run it. But I think at a minimum, running it for a week is very, very important. Say you're building a bank application. The majority of the time, it's probably being used 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You may not get a lot of traffic on the weekend. There's different habits of your users of using a feature or the product in general. You want to try and account for it all. So if you're running it for at least every day of the week, you're getting a little more of that feedback and really representative of the seasonality of your traffic. At Netflix, we've built a lot of tooling and infrastructure around A/B testing. We've been doing it for years, and we continue to innovate and do this. The tooling makes it really, really easy on us on the UI, which is great. It takes care of a lot of the heavy lifting to allocate users, to track them over time, make sure that we're cooking them so they see the same experience. Well, you don't necessarily need this infrastructure to start A/B testing today, and nor should you. Don't go invest all that time if you're just starting. There's a lot of great tools that are out there and available. There's tools like Optimizely, SiteSpec, Adobe has Adobe Target. There's a lot of tools that will do a lot of this heavy lifting for you. And actually, one of my favorites is Google Analytics. Google Analytics has A/B testing built into it. It's called Google Analytics Experiments. How many of you actually are probably running Google Analytics on your sites? Show of hands. It's quite a few. So you don't even need to introduce another tool. This is already there. You can go and create an A/B test, and it will start allocating your users. It will cookie them. It will track them. It will even start to tell you which experience is the better experience for your users, depending on the business metrics. So what I want to encourage is A/B tests. Start really testing things in production with real traffic. Make data-informed decisions, because we are often wrong. I know I am wrong often all the time, and I will continue to be wrong, and that's why we test. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.